It is Thursday, and you know what that means. That means it's another episode of Inside the Tape, brought to you by the Inside the Birds Network. Myself, Clay Harbor, former Philadelphia Eagles tight end, and the man, the myth, the legend, Greg Cosell, the guy that watches more tape, more film than anyone, I will say, on this planet and in any other planet for that matter, Greg Cosell. And we got a lot to talk about. Obviously, it's the bye week this week, so we're going to talk more about the Eagles and get a broad overview of where they are, because it's kind of the mid-season, the midpoint, the midterm, whatever you want to call it. And then we're obviously going to talk about this Cowboys game because it was such a big game, and we'll be seeing the Cowboys again later on in the season. So we're going to touch heavy on the Cowboys and then talk midterm. Where are the Eagles? What do they have to do to keep moving forward? What do they have to do to get back to another Super Bowl? So I'm going to stop wasting your time, and we're going to get right into it with Greg Cosell. Okay, Greg, when you turned on that film like you have so many times, Eagles-Cowboys, rivalry game, we all saw it on TV, but what happened inside the tape?
Yeah, obviously two sides of the ball here that we look at in detail. Special teams, I just don't have time for that in my life. Offensively, I find myself every week just amazed is too strong a word. I've been doing this a long time, Clay, so I'm not one of those people that, flies off the handle either positively or negatively. But, I think this team shows the ability week in and week out when they need a drive. They get the drive. I mean, look what happened. They were down 17-14 at halftime. They come out the first two drives of the third quarter, really efficient. They move the ball and they score touchdowns. And that changed the whole feel of the game. We'll get into the defense momentarily, but I think they've been doing that kind of thing all year. And I think one reason they can do that, and as you know, I've been doing this a long time. And I think one of the key things that they can do, and I think really good offenses do this, is they can beat you in multiple ways. It doesn't have to be Jalen Hurts dropping back 40 times and throwing for 350. He's capable of that if the game requires. The week before, we saw that against the Commanders when he was 29 for 38, when they chose to throw the football. This week, I thought he played very well, but he was only 17 for 23 because the game did not demand, or the way they chose to play the game did not demand that he drop back 40 or 45 times. And I think that that's absolutely critical to be a good offensive team, and they can hurt you and beat you in so many different ways. So that would be my starting point on offense. Here, why don't you jump in, and then we can talk a little bit about the defense.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought the Eagles offense, they made enough plays to get the job done. I think there's still some room to work on that run game. Obviously, your yards per carry is 3.3 at the end of the day. And looking back at the tape, I think Cam Jurgens could help. I think Tyler Steen didn't have to do a bad job. We'll see today when we watch some of the film that he did miss on a couple plays. But, overall, I think they got to really get this running game cooking to really get the most out of this offense moving forward. But you saw the usual suspects. A.J. Brown performed. Devontae Smith had a great touchdown catch and a great crossing route he caught over the middle. Dallas Goedert, I thought he played a nice game blocking, and he had some big catches there. Unfortunately, obviously, we'll talk a little bit about Goedert going out for 4 to 6 weeks. Unfortunately, I thought Swift played well in the run game, in the pass game. He had a couple catches for 2 catches for 31 yards. But as an Eagles-Cowboys matchup is concerned, I've been a part of these games before, and these games just throw the stats out the window. These games come down to who makes plays in the high-leverage positions, and the Eagles were able to do that. And that's what I was impressed with. Like you said, you go down at halftime, you come out, you have drives, and Jalen Hurts, if you throw a pitcher out there and he's pitching against the Phillies, and he's got 3 good pitches. If you take away one of his pitches, you take away the slider, now he's only got to change up on a fastball, he's going to get teed off on. Jalen Hurts is a guy, you take away his leg, he's obviously injured. He's going into the half, he's hobbling. He can't run like he usually wants to. They can't use the zone read Obviously, another reason I think the running game struggles, you can't use the zone read play. They're very effective at. I think Jalen Hurts is the best quarterback in the league at running the zone read. But you take away one of his pitches, and he's still able to beat you. You're taking one of the best pitchers in the league, taking away a pitch, and he's still beating you. So for me, I'm still very impressed with Jalen Hurts. The numbers weren't gaudy, but he did enough to get the W. And I thought overall the offense played a good game. He had a big defensive fight coming in.
I mean, through 9 games, they have the best third down offense at the NFL. They're tied with the Bills, 50% conversion rate. That's a big deal. I mean, third down is all, the money down, as they say. And I really liked 2 plays in particular, which were basically the same play. On the second touchdown drive, the Goddard 28 yards, it was the play, unfortunately, in which he broke his forearm. And then the Brown 40-yard touchdown, which ended that drive. It was basically the same play from a different formation. And, I like the way, that good teams often repeat plays, as particularly when they feel they have that they can beat the defense with it. So that stood out to me. I would say, and we'll get to this, obviously, when we talk a little bit about where they stand after 9 games. I think, as the first part of a bye week is for the coaches. That's where they do their self-scouting. The second part, obviously, the players come in, and then they do their game planning for the next game, which we'll talk about in great detail next week because it's the Chiefs. So it's a very big game on Monday Night Football. But we'll leave that alone for now. But one of the things that the self-scouting will look at is the run game, clearly. And, as fans like one sexy answer. There's rarely one sexy answer as to why you struggle in a particular area. And this from being a player. It's not just one thing. Oh, yeah, we'll do that and we're good. I mean, it's always a number of things. I remember years ago when I first met Phil Simms and we started talking football. And he said to me, a lot of people don't realize, but the cohesiveness and coordination that's required in the run game is really, really difficult. People just look at it back and think, oh, he just runs to daylight. But, the cohesion that you have in the run game with all the synchronization involved in blocks, that's hard. And, sometimes if one guy's off, like let's say you need a combo block and you need someone then to get to the second level off the combo block. If his timing's just a little off, that can blow up the play. So there's little things that can happen on each run play that you just try to work through and get better at. And those are the kinds of things they'll work on during the, the bye week and next week as they prepare for the Chiefs.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Greg. And it's really about unit cohesion, like you said, figuring out how to block with all these guys. And you're putting in a couple new guys. Obviously, Juergens is out. Opeta, you got Steen starting at right guard, so that was a big deal for the Eagles. And I think he played okay. He didn't miss.
He's never played guard before. Keep that in mind.
Not a guard. He was a tackle.
Right.
Yeah. No, rookie. So, that's impressive in itself, being able to play guard and not really stand out much in an NFL football game if you don't get your name called an offensive lineman. And also, obviously, we talked about it ad nauseum, the zone read. You take away a team's best run play. You look at Chicago Bears were the best running team in the NFL last year. Are the Bears' offensive line, is it much better than anybody else? No, the Bears had a running quarterback. You could use zone read. You could use the quarterback runs where you can use an extra blocker. You add a blocker. You look at the success the Saints are having in the run game when, obviously, you got Taysom Hill in the game. That's due to the fact that you're picking up a blocker. So if Jalen can get healthy after this bye week, maybe you start running him a little more. You'll see that running game pick up a little bit more. And Greg, to talk about the pass game, how do you think everybody looked in that sense? Are you happy with what you saw from Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, obviously? And what do you think the Eagles do moving forward with Dallas Goedert? Because he's a big piece of this pass game.
Yeah. No question. And again, we'll see how that plays out. My guess is we'll see Albert O, who's actually a receiver more than a blocker. So we'll probably see him. He's not been active, I don't believe, in any game, but we will certainly see him once the bye week ends. We'll see Jack Stoll obviously be the starting tight end, playing more snaps. I think Cal Katera, I believe he has a concussion, and he's unfortunately had those issues in the past. So I don't know what his status will be. He's a very good receiver. So we'll see how that plays out. Goddard was not necessarily a big volume target this year as opposed to previous years, but he's still a great player. I mean, Goddard's a top 5 tight end in the league. Just because he wasn't getting volume targets doesn't mean he's not a great player. So it'll be a little bit different. But I think overall, I really like what I've seen from Jalen for the most part. He made a throw in this game that I think really speaks to his development overall, and you'll probably remember it. It actually was on their third possession. He hit Devonta Smith for 19 yards on a crosser,
Yep.
and it was 3rd and 9. And I thought that play said so much about him because it was a play where the Cowboys, they're a high percentage man coverage team. So when you come out of the huddle and you look at the Cowboys and you see what looks like man coverage with a single high safety, which is what they are. In fact, they play the highest percentage of cover one in the league. You're thinking, okay, that's what I'm getting because that's who they are.
Yeah.
But Clay, they ended up, it was a disguise and they went late movement to essentially what became cover 2. Okay. And keep in mind, they did this as the ball's being snapped. So as a quarterback, hey, everybody, including myself, I can be a genius with a clicker watching a play 10 times. Jalen Hurts has a second and a half to figure this out. And he saw it immediately. And then instead of going to what he probably would have done, which was Brown as the boundary X one-on-one, he immediately went to the zone element of the route concept, which was a high-low. It was Goddard on the shallow crosser and Brown on the Smith on the intermediate crosser, and he hit Smith for 19 yards. And I thought that play just spoke volumes about Jalen Hurts because he had to see that. He had to recognize it. The term, of course, everybody uses processing, but that all has to happen in a second and a half. And he stayed in the pocket. He made that throw late in the down. And I thought that play was very, very reflective of his growth as a quarterback.
And that wasn't a wide open play, Greg. That was a tight window too.
A tight window, you're right.
So, that's also, the accuracy that he had to get that ball in there, pinpoint like that was very impressive. Watching the tape, I said, wow, at that play too. He had 2 big throws to Devonta Smith, obviously the touchdown. But moving towards the defense, this is what all the fans want to know about. If they've been listening to any radio, any podcast, they've heard ad nauseum, Greg. But I want to get your take after watching the film, breaking it down. You already know I'm going to ask you, what's going on with the Eagles slot defender? What's their move there? You saw some Slay. You saw, is Roby going to help this thing when he comes back? Should they move Byard there? Sidney Brown, Josh Jobe? What's going on here? Eli Ricks. So what is going on with the slot? What did you see in the Dallas game? And what do you think the Eagles do moving forward?
Yeah, none of it surprised me, Clay. I was not surprised that the Cowboys threw the ball well. The fact is, as we speak now, and Bradley Roby will be back, and he will become the slot corner because he's played that and been good at it. They don't have a slot corner. So they're trying to patch this together. Sidney Brown is not a slot corner. Eli Ricks is not a slot corner. So I wasn't surprised at all. This is a weakness in their coverage right now. They do not have a slot corner. And that is why Lamb ran 28 routes from the slot, 10 targets, 7 receptions for 133. 6 of those 7 receptions resulted in first downs. That's why Lamb was in the slot more than outside in this given game, because the Eagles do not have a slot corner. I think the bigger surprise, but I don't view it as a weakness, was I thought the Cowboys' offensive line did a really, really good job. I thought Tyron Smith looked like he did 5 years ago. He was unbelievable at left tackle, Clay. I think Josh Sweat is one of the most complete and one of the best right defensive ends in the game, and Tyron Smith did a really, really good job. I thought watching the tape that there was some great one-on-one matchups between Tyler Smith, the left guard, and Jalen Carter, and Tyler Smith more than held his own. So this was a really kind of fun game to watch. But I certainly was not surprised by the fact that the Cowboys and Prescott threw the ball really well, because I think the Eagles secondary has some concerns, and we'll see how that plays out as the season progresses, but they need Bradley Roby back because they do not have a slot corner.
Absolutely, Greg. And I saw, when I watched the tape, they did a lot of good things. The Cowboys, for them at least, they did a lot of good things as far as motion-wise, punch-wise. They did a lot of things, short motion, just to obviously you want to see what the Eagles are in, but also to get CeeDee Lamb on specific matchups where they know that he is going to have the advantage. So did you see some of that motion and bunch and shifts and things for the Cowboys to use that to their advantage?
without question. And that's one reason, I'm watching the tape and all of a sudden I'm seeing in the third quarter, and I'm noticing that, hey, Darius Slay's now playing right corner because he's normally a left corner and Bradbury's the right corner. So I ended up charting it, and Slay played 33 snaps at his usual left corner position and 28 snaps at right corner. And he did that at times to match up to Lamb because they were struggling with that matchup. And it was the most snaps he played at right corner because, like I said, he's a left corner in their defense. It was the most snaps he played at right corner since the Vikings game week 2 when he matched up to Justin Jefferson. So they clearly knew that they were having an issue with Lamb, and Slay, who's still their best corner. I don't think Slay's had his best season, but he's still their best corner. They felt they had to do that in this particular game. But your point's a really good one. I thought the Cowboys had a really good feel for how to attack the Eagles secondary, and they did a really good job. And their O-line really held up in this game.
Yeah, I saw that too, Greg. And one of my thoughts were, firstly, what does that say about their confidence in Bradbury? These guys are supposed to be 1A and 1B. And then on the flip side of that, how do you think Slay did? Obviously, he gave up some catches, some yards, but he did have some big wins, some big plays too. Obviously, the tackle in the game. How do you think Slay did? And does that say something? Is that something that Bradbury might need to look out for if you're moving Slay over to the right quarterback?
Well, look, Clay, you played in the league, so this league is not about putting your arms around players and singing Kumbaya. It's about performance. And the tape tells you the story, and it's all there. You can't sit in the meeting room. I've been fortunate enough in my career to be able to do that at times, not during the season, but in training camp. So I know how coaches talk. They still talk to guys like grown men, but the reality is the tape is right in front of you. If you're not playing well, you can't sit there and say, "Oh, coach, I'm sorry. I think I'm really playing great." No, it's right there in front of you. And the bottom line is, when you watch the Eagles, as you and I have all season long, and we look at every game, we study it. Bradbury's not played well this year, and I can't sit here and say, okay, he's finished. I don't know that, but he's not played well through 9 games, and now that is a question going forward. How do they handle that? We know that Roby will come back and play in the slot, and they'll improve there. But Bradbury has not played really well on the outside. And based on the contract, they're kind of, I guess I shouldn't say they're stuck, because if the coaching staff really feels that it's a problem, they'll have a decision to make. We'll see how that goes. I think Slay's played better, but again, he's another corner that's over 30. I don't think he's quite as dynamic as he's been. He was a great corner for a long time. I don't think his movement is quite as dynamic, but he's still their best corner. So, you got to put your best corners out there. Slay's their best corner. We'll see going forward what the situation is with Bradbury, because the one thing you don't want to be, and I think you know this, you don't want to become predictable. You don't want to build your defense around compensating for players. Now, sometimes you have to do that, but you'd rather not be in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And, cornerback is such a dynamic position, as you said, and it's such a tough position. When you age and you lose just half a step, that makes the biggest difference in the world. Some guys, offensive tackle, maybe O-line, you can see play for years, and it's not as big a deal. A quarterback gets a little slower, but as long as he can still process, fine. Quarterback, your brain obviously has to work, but you have to be physically at the top of your game, because it's those split seconds that mean everything when you're guarding someone one-on-one. When you have to move into the slot, you have to be at such a level. And when you age a little bit, just lose a half a step, it can be a big, big drop-off. Well, Greg, that was great stuff, and let's continue this conversation. But let's do it over some tape. Let's watch tape. I took out a couple of clips that I liked throughout the game. I thought told a bit of a story. So let's take a peek at some of these plays here and talk about them. This is end of the game, Greg. So this is going to be a series that we talk about here. This is down the stretch when the Eagles are nearing the end of the game, and they have to get a stop. They have to get a stop here.
Looks like they're playing. Looks like 2-man right now. I mean, if I'm the quarterback, I'm looking at this and thinking they're playing 2-man.
2-man, and this looks like they got Sidney Brown
I believe it is. And he's not a slot corner. And by the way, I believe he gets caught inside here because of the route concept, and he sort of gets picked, if I'm not mistaken. If I remember the play, let's run it. I want the audience to know that I always tell you, just put the plays up. Don't tell me in advance, because I just want to react spontaneously. Yeah, see, here you go. Here's a guy who's not a slot corner, because what's he doing? He's going over the top of this. He can't go over the top of this.
No. And it puts him in a really tough position.
Yeah, because they are playing two-man. So he tries to go over the top of it, and he's matched up to Lamb, which is not what you want to begin with. But, he can't do this.
And this is a man beater right here. This rub, Dallas just outplayed the Eagles right here. They run a man beater, a rub route. Gallup does a great job of getting in here and picking off at this natural pick. Yep. Using the Eagles player against himself, and that's a huge play. You can't let this happen. This is the end of the game here.
Yeah, and here's a perfect example. Sidney Brown is a phenomenal straight line athlete. He was a box safety in college. That's what he did. He's not a slot corner, and so people understand slot corner is one of the toughest positions to play in the NFL. The number of responsibilities you have as a slot corner are far greater than people might think. And if you've never played the position, you really don't have a sense of all those things. So, you're dealing with a they're playing two-man, which seemingly is a good coverage because he has help over the top, but he's never played, he hasn't really played it before until he got to the Eagles. So he's just not comfortable with all that's involved, and he's not going to have a good feel for the route concepts that come from it.
Yeah, and you spoke on Tyron Smith earlier today, and we got this right there. I mean, he was just great in protection.
Tyron Smith was unbelievable in this game.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a clip, but I have to point that out too.
Yeah, no, he was phenomenal. I mean, I love Josh Sweat. I think he's the Eagles' best overall defensive lineman, and I've thought that way for a couple of years. But Tyron Smith really did a good job against him.
And then I wanted to show off Josh Sweat here.
Well, it's interesting, because Sweat went to the other side in the fourth quarter and started to work against Steele, who, unfortunately for the Cowboys, kind of became the patsy because Brandon Graham beat him a couple of times, and now they brought Sweat over there and he beat him. Unfortunately, that's an area that the Cowboys, if there's any Cowboys fans who are listening to us, Clay, that's an area the Cowboys, Steele, he's had good moments in this league. It's why they gave him a contract, but he struggled in those high leverage, critical situations in this game.
And look at Smith here. I mean, this is Hassan Reddick. Okay.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he's playing really good football here. So all right, that was one play I wanted to stop. I wanted to show you guys there. So now we've been talking about CeeDee Lamb's tough to guard. Right here, you got CeeDee Lamb in the slot. He's a number 3. And who is this? This looks like
isn't that Byard? Maybe I can't tell.
I can't tell right now.
Yeah, they're in basically a 1x3 nub set because the tight end is attached to the boundary, so it's a 1x3 nub.
Yeah, it's like a man-to-man.
Yeah,
cover one. Let's call it.
Well, it's definitely single high safety.
Yeah.
So they're matching up.
Blitz. Yeah, man-to-man with 7 blitz.
Yeah, and he's going to run a little, what a lot of people might call a little jerk route.
Yeah, that's a jerk.
Yep. Boom, stop. You get the defender to stop and react to it. And I think it is Byard, is it not? 31? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So they ended up, because of the formation, because he's inside at number 3. So it's not just a slot. He's number 3 to trips. So because he's number 3 to trips and the Eagles are playing nickel and they're keeping their corner, Slay, at left corner. Okay, that's what happened. If you're going to keep Slay at left corner, you're going to need a safety to match up to Lamb when he's number 3 to trips, and that's what happened.
Yep, exactly. And then let's take a look at the next play here. So Gallup on Bradbury.
And here's Bradbury playing left corner, which he normally does not play.
Yeah.
What's interesting, you were talking about Bradbury. Bradbury does not have the speed to lose because Bradbury wasn't fast to begin with. You know, when he was first drafted by Carolina, and I believe Sean McDermott might have been the DC in Carolina at that time, I believe
Yeah.
he was. Bradbury's always been a really, really good zone corner. That's been his thing. You know, he's not really viewed, and if you talk to people around the league, he's not necessarily a man corner. He's a
Yeah.
great zone corner. But the Eagles under Sean Desai play a lot of man coverage.
Mm-hmm. And here's just showing you guys a little bit of the run game here. This is a good play by Tyler Steen. He had a few good, a few bad, and it just looks like a zone scheme right here.
That's very good, yeah. Overall, I thought he did a really nice job in pass pro. He got beat by Micah Parsons twice, but a lot of people get beat by Micah Parsons. And then I thought in the run game, I thought he was better overall in pass pro than the run game. But given that don't forget, he was a 4-year starter in the SEC, 3 at Vanderbilt, 1 at Bama as a tackle. He's not a guard. So the only time he's really played guard is since he got to the Eagles and, when they cross-trained him at guard and tackle, which they, Jeff Stoutland does a lot of those kinds of things. But he had not played guard in a game.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's so big for Tyler Steen. And right here,
this is the touchdown, right?
Yep, this is the Devonta Smith touchdown. It looks like cover one, high safety, and let's see if they bring a blitz.
Cover 1. Looks like they're rushing 4.
Yeah, rushing 4, no blitz, but that just
I think it's going to be a stutter go on Bland, is it not?
Yep, stutter go on Bland. That means they're one-on-one, right?
Yeah, it's one-on-one across the board with a single high safety.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's cheating to AJ because AJ is AJ.
I think what they're doing here is they're playing man on the 3 wide receivers and kind of zone matching inside depending on the routes. But with the slot, with the 3 wide receivers, they're matching up. And by the way, this was a big time throw.
Yeah, dropping the bucket right here. Nice throw, great catch. We fly, Eagles fly.
Yeah.
And we got
great throw. You couldn't have handed it to him any better, Clay. As a receiver, when the ball's thrown like that, you love it.
Hard not to catch that one.
Yep.
I got one more we want to talk about here, Greg. We got motion here, and I think we got Job over here trying to guard CeeDee Lamb.
I think that might be Ricks, isn't it?
Ricks.
I believe, wasn't this the short yardage play?
Yep.
Yeah, so they did the return motion to confirm the man. They know they got man now with the return motion. And then this is Lamb just running a great route against a corner that's not a slot corner.
Yep.
Tough to match up. I mean, even if he had played slot corner, that's one of the best slot receivers in the NFL in Lamb against a rookie. So that's going to be a tough matchup. They knew they were going to get that. That's why they called the play.
Yep. Absolutely. And here, what do we got here? I think we got Zacchaeus. I think Zacchaeus' only catch of the night.
I think they went to cover 2 here. Yeah, see, here's another example where disguise late rotation to cover 2. I believe this was a 3rd down play. This is a really good job because it looks like it's man. Looks like man single high, and then they rotate to cover 2, disguise late rotation. And again, Jalen does a great job, immediately recognizes it, knows where the void is in the coverage, and immediately gets the ball. And don't forget, like I said about that other play, he does, he has a second to know exactly what's going on, and he does, gets rid of the ball, 1st down. These are the kinds of plays that matter a lot in games, Clay, as you know. They're not the kind of plays you're going to see on a highlight reel, but they're important plays.
And then right here you have A.J. Brown being A.J. Brown, Greg.
Yeah, this is probably 4, just judging by it. It looks like quarters, cover 4. That's what it is.
Quarters. You see these lines right here.
But this is cover 4, quarters coverage. Yep.
A.J. Brown.
Brown did a good job of challenging Gilmore vertically. So Gilmore turned his body. And as you know, once you turn your body like that, you can't play the stop route.
Nice job.
Hey, it's Jeff Mosher. I love the fall because football's back, but it's also my busiest season. Between work, kids going back to school, youth sports and activities, there's just not enough time, especially to make a good home-cooked meal. That's why I love HelloFresh. They deliver farm fresh food with pre-proportioned ingredients and seasonal recipes right to my doorstep. No more wasting time at the grocery store because America's #1 meal kit helps make home cooking easy, efficient, and affordable. We don't waste time researching new recipes and planning meals. With HelloFresh, the shopping's already done. The perfect amount of ingredients arrive with step-by-step recipe cards. How efficient is that? Plus, HelloFresh saves you time and money. HelloFresh is 25% less expensive than takeout, so you'll get a home-cooked meal without digging deep into your wallet. Don't forget about taste and selection. HelloFresh makes food for meat lovers, seafood lovers, vegetarians, and those who love variety. My personal favorites are the spicy Creole stew and pecan crusted trout, 2 dinners my whole family enjoyed, and we actually had time to sit down together and eat at the table. Go to HelloFresh.com/50Eagles and use the code 50Eagles for 50% off plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com/50Eagles. Use that code 50Eagles for 50% off plus free shipping. Act now for America's #1 meal kit.
Yeah.
So we talked about some of the film, some of the things that we saw in the game. We gave you guys a firsthand look of exactly what we're seeing when we're watching this tape to confirm some of the things we're talking about, just so you know we're telling the truth. You know we're not making anything up. But, Greg, moving forward, before we get out of here and let everybody go on the bye week, we won't see them again until next week when we're talking about the Kansas City Chiefs and that game, which I'm really excited about. It's always fun when Andy Reid plays against Philadelphia.
Yeah.
It's fun time. Coach who drafted me. But it's mid-season, right? We're at the mid-season point. The bye week's coming up. Give us your overview, your report card, your midterm. What do you think? Start with offense. We'll go to defense. What do you think's going on here with our Eagles?
Well, let's look at it the way I believe coaches will look at this, as opposed to, let's say, fans. I mean, obviously they're 8-1. That's the best record in the league, so there's no problem there. But I think if you're a coach and you're spending your bye week self-scouting, as we mentioned a little earlier, offensively, you're likely looking at the run game. How can we make our run game now more productive off of what's happened the last 3-4 weeks? Because we're going to need the run game to be a factor. Every game is different. You need the run game. You want a multi-dimensional offense. The second part of that is now with Dallas Goedert out 4 to 6 weeks, and who knows, it could be 6-7 weeks. You just don't know. Now, how does that impact our offense, and how do we want to deal with that? That's the next thing you have to think about, because Goddard, whether he's a volume target or not, is a big-time player and can be a factor just on sheer ability in any given game. And opposing defensive coaches know that. So now they don't have that level talent at that position. So how do they deal with that? So I think those are two areas on the offensive side of the ball that we'll have to wait and see how they get addressed, but they will be looked at during this bye week. Defensively, I think they're going to look at the secondary, and they're going to try to figure out, as they play some of these teams that potentially can explode, the Chiefs, the Bills. I think they play the Niners. They're going to look at the secondary, I think, Clay, and see, okay, how do we feel about our players? Do we need to try to compensate for some weakness, camouflage some weakness, or do we just keep playing the same way? And when we get Bradley Roby back, we'll have a slot corner. We don't know the answer to that, but I think they have to take a long, hard look at that. And the other question on defense is, with Nakobe Dean now with a Liz Frank injury going on IR again, could well be the end of his season. Unfortunately, he's had so many foot injuries. You hope it's not the end of his career. But they've had a nice rotation. Do they still have a nice rotation? Who's the third guy if they're going to have a rotation? Because my guess is they don't want Morrow and Cunningham playing 60 snaps a game. So that's a question they'll have to figure out with who's on their roster, who's on their practice squad. How do they want to handle that?
And that's some good stuff right there. And just talk about when Greg's saying self-scout, he means the coaches are going to go back and they're going to watch every single game that they've played up to this point, and they're going to take notes. They're going to see what they did well. They're going to see what they need to work on and improve on, and they're going to all talk about that collectively. They're going to come up with a plan. Here's what we need to do moving forward. We got this week off. So they're not off. They're not out of the building. These coaches are still working hard. People think
players are out. They give the players time to recharge.
The players.
Yeah.
As a player, it's the bye week. For me, what I would do is I'd get away from football while I'm still working out. I'm still hitting the gym, but you're putting your feet up. You're getting away from football for a while. If guys have families, they're spending extra time with their family, getting away from the game and kind of recharging. There's nothing crazy that you do in the bye week and the off season. You're getting away from football. It's about rest. It's about getting your feet ready to get back into this season and this huge stretch they got in front of them. You got Kansas City. You obviously got Buffalo coming in. You've got big-time Seahawks. You got Dallas again. This second half of the season is going to be really important for them. And as players, you're just focusing on recharging. I wanted to touch on something. A.J. Brown, I mean, in 9 games, he's already got 1,000 yards halfway through the season. Very impressive. Devontae Smith on pace for 1,000 yards again this year. Dallas Goedert has 400 yards. It's a shame that he's out. And then I want to say, if there was one person that surprised me at this point, it'd probably be DeAndre Swift. To think that he has 600 yards, 3 receiving touchdowns, and another 3 rushing touchdowns, another receiving touchdown with another 166 yards in the passing game. I think Swift is probably one of my biggest surprises of the first half of the season. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of him. I thought he's done a really nice job. But overall, Greg, like we said, moving forward, I think they're in a great position. They're 8-1. They do have a lot to improve on. Hopefully, Roby comes back and he gives you some production from that inside slot position.
Yeah.
Obviously, tight end, I think you're going to see a lot more 11 personnel with a tight end use the block. Maybe you'll see some 10 if Quez Watkins comes back. Maybe you'll see a little bit of, this guy nobody really knows about. His name's Julio Jones.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a tight end, but in the context of how he could be deployed, he could perhaps, fill that role. And by fill that role, I don't want people to think that he's going to line up attached to the tackle and down block on defensive ends. That's not what I mean. But I'm talking about in the pass game, do similar things that Dallas Goedert does in the pass game.
Absolutely. I think they could use him in the slot to run some of those routes that Dallas was running. He's got a ton of catches in his career and has shown he can do that. Good stuff, Greg. It was good stuff. We gave them what they wanted here. Beautiful midseason report.
Yeah.
We'll be back next Wednesday talking about the Kansas City Chiefs, and we'll have some good tape for you, and we'll let you guys know what we're seeing inside the tape from myself, Clay Harbor, former Eagles tight end, and Greg Cosell, NFL Films, the man who watches more tape than anyone on this planet. We'll see you guys later. Fly, Eagles, fly.